it's kind of funny. If you're really interested in waking up, it almost seems like trying to feel better is counterproductive. And
Yes.
I've yet to come across an awakening story, from teachers or whatnot, that didn't seem to involve an incredible bottoming out, a lot of agony,
Mm-hmm.
and that seemed to be necessary in some way. I mean,
Mm.
I'm a bit amused by. I mean, I appreciate teachers that say you don't have to go through that. But I've yet to come across an awakening story where someone didn't go through a horrific sense of suffering that propelled them somehow to a deeper understanding.
No, there are glimpses, quite a few accounts, and share with you my own, that there are glimpses of the glory of the divine self that are just, take you to the bliss of the self immediately. Are very joyous. And what usually happens is there is a tug of war between the human and the divine, that the person wants to own God, and even after a glimpse of God, they come to God and they want God to come to them, come to me, and that's where the suffering comes in. When you are stubborn with God, out of God's love, it says, no, you have to come to me. So you're pulling really, really hard. You're exerting yourself away, meaning into the world, into the personal experience, into the personal, give me this and give me that, and I want it again, or I want this and I want that. I, meaning I, the person. Whenever you are into the humanity, you are into the personhood, and you're moving away from God. To come to God, you surrender your humanity to God, meaning as you surrender it, you recognize the divinity. Because you're really not surrendering anything but your ignorance, meaning your belief into a human form, into the physical form. You're surrendering that. So yes, there is suffering in the spiritual journey, but depending on how deeply rooted is your struggle with the divine revelation. We want the divine revelation we want to humanize it. We want it to come down to our lingo, to our terms, to deliver for us our bill of goods. And in our ignorance, we just believe in experiences, in personal experiences, that this is where it's at. We actually dig down, miles down in the ground to find gold, because this is where it's at. We're looking for this shiny metal but no, the revelation, the closer you come to God, the sweeter it is. And there are many, many experiences where people have a revelation of the divine, and it's glorious. There are some which was a little bit astonishing to me when I heard about it, but then I came to realize that it was not a full glimpse, where in their glimpse of the divine glimpse, the fear just came on and grabbed them right away, and within a few hours, within a day or two. So there are glimpses and glimpses. There are partial glimpses, and there is a full glimpse. Say that the glimpse is fuller, the more joyful it is, and the more it radiates. It's not like an experience where the personal self comes back on board. But there are still, even in the case of a full glimpse, there are still the vasanic process. There is still vasanas. There are still, certain tendencies in the body-mind, mostly at the body level, but slightly at the mind level, mostly at the body level, that still have to bubble up to the surface and dissolve in the self. Did I get your question right? Did I?
So. It's kind of funny because I don't know why I think everything's funny, but in a way, it's like if we identify as human, it's a form of megalomania. If we think that we're God, but there's an actual truth to that. We are God, just not in the way we think we are.
Yes, right. We are God as God. We are not God as a human.
Critical distinction.
Yes, we are God as God, meaning we are God as universal beingness. We're not God as a personal self. That's, it's an important distinction, because the misunderstanding of that, fortifies the egoic tendency, fortifies the unhappiness and the misery. But also, maybe in your question, you're asking about, like, at some point or the other, there is the death of the self, the complete death of the personal self, the complete. And there are quite a few cases where, towards the end of your journey, there is an experience, a life experience, that just you can't deal with it. There is no way for you to deal with it, and it sort of forces you to surrender. And your mind can't figure it out, can't find a way through it, and it sort of goes right to the bullseye. There are quite a few accounts of that I'm familiar with, that I heard of. Ramana Maharshi, for example, if you're familiar with Ramana, at a young age he had this thing about, like, dying, that and he just lie down on the floor, and he died. And came to that killed his personal self. That would be sort of really, it's an easy way, that would be the simpler.
Voluntary.
I mean, something came upon him that really grasped him at a deep level, but there weren't, like, life situations that went on, sort of getting tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter in his experience, at least as far as I heard about it. But in many cases in our life, we have situations in our life that just starts, could be that, like, our business collapses, our relationship collapses, and maybe kids, some major items in your life that define your life collapse quickly, and there is no way for you outside of that, but brings you to your knees. We don't go looking for that. You don't need to look for that. It'll come to you if you need it, if that's part of your path. You simply you live your understanding. Living your understanding one of the aspects of living understanding is living out of presence, out of the peace, out of that place that is not wounded by, is not affected by what arises, out of the stillness. Because that dimension of being, the stillness, the presence, the peace, the inner peace, that is our being. That is not out there. If it's real here now, always real. Whether we're in touch with it or not, it's a different matter, but its reality is eternal. And in our contemplation, we start to get a sense of this peace. And then to sort of invite whatever actions we take, whatever thoughts we eventually use to motivate our action, we make sure that they're soaked into the stillness. And not just simply being contaminated by this sense of that there is a personal threat and I need to fight, run or freeze. And that stillness is peace. And it is its own confirmation. And it also confirms itself in that whatever actions we take that come from peace carry the perfume of the peace. They carry the flavor of the peace. And it's as if they spread the peace. Doesn't stir the space into something else than the peace that is expressing. But the difficulty with peace is that when we're looking for personal goods, we say, "Oh God, I love you," but here, I want this and that. See, when we are still believing and feeling that we need something besides God. God meaning truth and peace, which is not personal. What is it? Personal truth or personal peace is a joke. It's not real peace. Peace is universal. Truth is universal. Love is universal. Freedom is universal. Beauty is universal. But when we personalize, we objectify ourselves and an object that represents the universal, that represents God. When we do that, then it is a distortion in our understanding and in our life.
People talk about being in a bad relationship, but I think if you're having a relationship with yourself, you're in a bad relationship, so to speak.
Yeah, right, because you have separated yourself from yourself. You have a relationship with who is having a relationship with whom. You are the self. A relationship with oneself is complete intimacy, if you could say that, but I mean, it's language, it's complete intimacy. In intimacy, you're not just intimate with yourself, you're intimate with everything and everyone. Intimacy is our true nature is intimacy.
What I find is there are times where my story or stories seem to evaporate or collapse, or I forget them.
Yeah.
And then the sense of separation from myself or from others seems to lift.
Yes. Yeah. It happens more often than we know, but we don't notice that. It's much more often than we know, but we don't notice that. We notice just the noise. We don't notice the gaps. But in a way, in the spiritual journey, we start to notice more and more the peace, the ease of being, and less the me and him, me and you, me and her, me and... In a way, it's as if a noticing. There's a shift in noticing.
The metaphor that comes to my mind is, the eye of the needle.
Yes.
And if I have any clothes or identity on, I can't go through the eye of the needle.
Yes.
But if I'm completely naked, then there's no problem.
Yes.
But if I try to gather a bunch of stuff through it, it just hurts.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes. 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 We don't need anything, luggage or baggage. We don't need anything because we already are everything. But to come to that understanding, you need to become clear that you are not the thoughts that appear. You are not what the thoughts or the sensations or the feelings say you are. You are nothing that you perceive expresses what you are. Yeah, you see? So everything that we perceive refers to our wholeness. It doesn't refer to what we are. And we often take our cues about what we are and what's happening for us and where we're at from thoughts and sensations. It's very awkward. It's like it's as if we take our cues about what we are and what's happening for us, might as well take it from the weather. Because we experience the weather, right? Like we experience our thoughts and sensations, we also experience the weather. And in fact, actually, it's not so funny, but I think a lot of people take their cues about how they're feeling from the weather. Actually, they do.
Literally.
They do. I remember years ago, I was much younger, I was working in this bank, and I was the mail clerk. And I don't know, I was just happy. I was just go into the bank, and I was sort of happy. And I would say hello to everybody, hello. And I noticed after a while, they complain. Many of them complained about the weather. And I realized that I was raining on their parade. So I had to start to say, it is not so good today. But I didn't feel that way. But I noticed that's what
But did you find that can start affecting your mood?
No, because I was really happy.
Yeah, see, I do that. I'll say, oh yeah, it's awful. It's raining, which I'll tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I don't mind the rain.
Yeah, right.
Actually, I like getting caught in a rainstorm.
Yeah.
And getting wet. There's no problem.
Yeah.
But it's like if people are upset by the rain and I kind of affect their being upset, it starts to make me feel inconvenienced by the rain.
So you have to be careful not to do it then. Maybe you woke up, you talk about something else with them. If it affects you, then that's a bummer. But I know what you mean. Sometimes some conversations you really don't want to linger too long with them.
If you start acting human, you can start becoming human.
Yeah. It depends, you know. Yeah, there comes a point where you just really can't, you know, because a fruit that ripens, it cannot unripen. When you spend so much time in the sun and in the on the branch and it's raining and the tree is getting nutrition and you're ripening, the perfume of the fruit starts to emanate from the fruit. You can't reverse it. It's in a way like that with this in the spiritual contemplation. There comes a point where you can't, you know, be taken back. I know of people who have had a great awakening. I was witness to that. And then their personal self came back. And they were like really in the person and their personal problems and this and that. And it was puzzling to me that how, and it was like a very clear awakening of this person was for 2-3 months they were floating, really floating. But many years later, I would say over 20 years later, I started to notice that they were coming back to the contemplation, and then their life started to change. 20 years later, or maybe more than 20 years later. So some fruits, they stay green for a long time, you know, and then at some time they start to ripen. But it's unavoidable that when there is a glimpse in the self, and it doesn't need to be like a big glimpse, just could be like numerous small insights or whatever. It's not defining that it is going to take you. It cannot. When a jar is cracked, it's unavoidable. Even if it's a drip, the water is dripping, drip by the crack. It is unavoidable. It's just a matter of time for that jar to be emptied. Of course, we can help it a little bit by, you know, knocking it a little bit more, you know. Hopefully the ignorance will flow out faster. That's what we do in a way when we get together. Most of the satsang is about that, and most of the satsang is not what you hear. It's under the radar. Most of the satsang is under the radar. It's the self, it's presence, it's beingness. It's not heard or seen or sensed. It's sensed with the senses, with the 5 senses. And then there is, of course, the infinite way. You could say that once you're on the journey, the infinite way becomes available to you. But also there are situations where the infinite way is even more available to you. At some point, it is available to you across the board. It's like you're traveling, and you're traveling in the whole space. So it can rain anywhere and everywhere. When it rains, you have a drink of water from the rain. Anywhere, it's available to you everywhere and anywhere. But there are places where there are springs. where you can drink your heart to your heart satisfaction, to your heart's content, and you can fill your jug. Hopefully it doesn't have a crack in it. In this case, you don't want it to be cracked. And it's very good for your journey. You have satisfied your thirst, and now you have that reserve. You can drink anytime. You can be 10 miles away and get thirsty. You take a chug. You take a
Chug. Chug-a-lug.
Chug-a-lug. That one I don't know, but chug, yes.
I've been experiencing sort of